את רוב התוכן שאני צורך, אני בדרך כלל צורך באנגלית, ובדרך כלל ממקורות אמריקאים. בפרק הזה הייתה לי הזדמנות לשתף מהידע שצברתי וזיקקתי דווקא עם קהל אמריקאי. לפני כמה חודשים קיבלתי הזמנה להתארח בפודקאסט שנקרא CX Live. זה פודקאסט באנגלית של דרבי מקארתי, והיא הזמינה אותי לדבר על הנושא שקשור לסטרס, מיינדסט וביצועים, בעיקר בתוך ארגון, אבל גם בחיים האישיים. ורציתי לשתף אתכם בשיחה הזאת. שיחה שבה דיברנו גם על הגישה הייחודית שפיתחתי לניהול לחץ, דרך שינוי מיינדסט, ורלוונטית גם לקהל ישראלי וגם לקהל בחול. אז חשוב לי להגיד תודה גם לדרבי על ההזדמנות להביא את התובנות האלה לקהל הבינלאומי שלה. דרך אגב, דרבי יצרה פודקאסט ייחודי שמצליח לשלב גם שיחות מעמיקות ותובנות מעשיות לקהל ארגוני ומקצועי שעוסק בחוויית לקוח ופיתוח ארגוני. אני מזמין אתכם להקשיב לשיחה שחושפת כלים מעשיים לשינוי הדרך שבה אנחנו תופסים ומנהלים לחץ בחיים שלנו. דרך אגב, הכנתי גם חוברת עבודה מיוחדת למאזיני הפודקאסט שלה, והיא נמצאת גם בתיאור בלינק הזה. תהנו מהפרק.
Hello, and welcome to the CX Live, an interview-style podcast addressing topics, trends, and tips for creating real-time digital experiences in a customer-first, customer-last world. This show for briefing and meeting professionals brings you authentic and unfiltered conversations with industry experts who know how to elevate customer experience across people, teams, and programs. Let's listen in.
Welcome, everyone, to our CX Live podcast series dedicated to today's briefing professionals. I'm Darby Mason-Werner, your podcast host, and I'm excited to be interviewing thought leaders across our industry who can share their experiences and ideas to help all of us improve our programs. Today's discussion is focused on addressing our stress from depletion to renewal. And this is our second episode in a mini-series exploring the power of a positive mindset. Clearly, the effects of stress on our mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health cannot be denied. For briefing program teams specifically, the stress of planning for and executing every last detail of our customer engagements weighs on us each and every day. Our programs are highly visible, often including executive leadership and subject matter experts who must be well prepared to carry on customized discussions with a variety of customers across industries, regions, and levels of potential revenue for the company. We strive to make each engagement perfect, exceeding the guests' high expectations, and we carry this overwhelm into our lives outside of our work offices. What does it look like to not put ourselves last? How do we finally take that step? This is what we'll be exploring today. And today I am so excited to be joined by Shlomi Haster, growth mindset expert, speaker, podcaster, and stress management specialist. As a passionate advocate for personal and professional growth, Shlomi finds immense joy in witnessing individuals flourish, develop, and achieve success. This deep-rooted passion led him to the intersection of organizational learning and development, known as L&D, and personal growth mindset. With a BA in human behavior and an MA in organizational science, Shlomi has accumulated 15 years of experience working in startup and high-tech environments, primarily in learning and development functions. Guided by an innate desire to facilitate professional and personal development, he aspires to equip individuals with inner strength, a growth mindset, stress management, and power skills necessary to thrive in the future of work. In addition to his professional endeavors, Shlomi hosts one of Israel's leading podcasts called Mindset, which has been running for over 5 years with 162 episodes and counting. Each episode features a distinguished guest who is an expert in their field, encompassing various aspects of personal and professional development. And as a heart math, building personal resilience BPR coach, Shlomi is trained to help individuals develop emotional resilience and stress management skills using the HeartMath system. This involves teaching techniques such as heart-focused breathing, emotional self-regulation, and coherence building, which are designed to help people better cope with stress, anxiety, and emotional challenges. He is also passionate about supporting transformative journeys, empowering ourselves and others to unlock their full potential. And I want to thank my friend, Sharon Gertzman, whom I met at the 2019 ABPM European Conference in Belgium, for recently connecting Shlomi and I via her new entrepreneurial adventure known as thecreativebysharon.com. I believe in serendipitous moments where the universe brings the right people with the right knowledge and energy to align with what we need to hear and experience at just the right time. And Shlomi and I met just as I was producing episode 73, focused on connected balance with Kathy Seebeck. It just feels perfect to be offering this mini series about positive mindset, sharing how we can put in the action for our personal lives and extend it to our business interactions. And with all of that, I want to say hi to Shlomi, and I am so honored to be connecting with you today. And thank you for making time to share your passion and your light with our listeners.
So hi, Darby. It's a pleasure to be here. I really want to thank you for inviting me. I also want to echo my gratitude to Sharon as well.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited about this important conversation that we're going to have.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so looking forward to this. And so, after I shared all of that intro and everything, there's so much in there, but I know, let's start with really looking at stress. And how would you define it, and how can we recognize it in ourselves?
So after many years of researching stress, I really like the basic natural evolutionary definition, which is stress is a natural, I would say, mechanism in our body that is designed to help us to survive.
Yes.
This is the basic definition of stress. And the reason that I'm addressing this more neutral and natural definition of stress is I think that we need to relearn stress. Most of us, ever since the 1970s, are, I would say, bombarded by articles, research, and media telling us that stress is such a negative thing without really offering us a solution, while all of these factors like media and corporates are actually just contributing to more stress. So Absolutely. I think that when we talk about stress, people sometimes get a very specific association with stress. And this is the reason I really like to start with offering the more neutral and natural definition of stress, because eventually evolution is very smart and kind. And the reason that we have this mechanism is to support us. And I think this conversation today will unveil the subtleties and the nuances that we have in stress, as in specific stress versus chronic stress, and how our mindset is related to both of these. And this is my, I would say, intro and definition to stress.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. It's so true, though, because we have heard, seen, even, experienced just with all of the media, as you say, articles, information. I mean, this is not a new topic. This is not something that I, personally, and I know folks who are listening, that we haven't been dealing with, for 30, 40, whatever, dare I say how long I've been in the working world, but even before that, through college and the experiences that you have, it just shows up in different ways in our lives, all across elements of our lives. So I think you're spot on.
Yeah. I can even share something, I think just because we're hitting it right now, I think it's important to share that there's a super surprising research that found that they took a group of people that suffered from the same level of high stress. Okay, so that was the original group. Then they created a questionnaire that helped the research understand what are the core beliefs that people have when it comes to what stress is doing for them, right? So we have a group of people, all of them are in high stress environments, but one group was spotted as they had a belief that stress is harmful for their body and for their, and the other group didn't have this belief. And what they found is it's not the level of stress alone that creates disease. It's the belief that we have around stress. So this is why our mindset and what we believe in, especially after mentioning that media and everything else told us that stress is so harmful, it's really important for us to get a good relationship with stress and understand it thoroughly, not to be afraid of it, and at the same time, not to keep it unmanaged totally.
That's a really great example, the research project that you were talking about, to know that in a controlled groups really, that it really was that difference, that belief, and that's the connection to the mindset piece and what we're going to talk about today. So, that's fantastic. And we in our previous episode, this is our second. I'm just like, you and I have talked about this. This is so amazing how this all came about, like all at the same time. It's like, what? This is so cool. But we were looking at connected balance and exploring those different growth mindset tools in the previous. So let's talk about what you just touched on and led us to with how that mindset, how we can change that mindset as it relates to stress.
So I would start by following up everything that we just mentioned. The first thing that I would say is important is for everyone to explore their own beliefs about stress. What does stress mean to me? Because I think this is the first step of awareness to create a more balanced approach towards stress in our mindset. So that, I would say, the first important thing for everyone to get connected to what they think and believe about stress. That's, I would say, the first step. And then the second step is actually a very interesting study that was done in Harvard University. And what they wanted to do, they wanted to focus more on specific or time-bound stress, unlike chronic stress, I would say.
Okay.
So that means that there is an event or any type of, we can call it a stressor in the outer world, or even in our internal conversation that we can have in our mind, because our body doesn't really know if the threat is something that we think of or there's an actual threat out there.
Right.
So the study that they did was trying to understand how changing the mindset can actually affect our, I would say, the pressure or the stress level that we're in. Because if we're in a very low stress level, then we might feel unchallenged and even bored. And we don't really want that when we are talking about peak performance. If we're overstressed, then we feel overwhelmed, we feel anxiety sometimes, and this really affects our ability to perform in the way that we want to.
Right.
But there's something in the middle, in the stress curve, that is called peak performance. If you think about all the athletes, the performers, the people that needs to deliver something in a very specific way at a very specific time, they are people that have mastered their ability to put their stress in the peak performance level. So this is what this research was trying to do, understanding how can we harness this tension, the energy that we get in our body when we feel stressed, into the right position. And what they found is that if you train the mindset to adopt a new style of coping when a stress event comes, you can actually get better results. Not only better performance, but an increased well-being and satisfaction in our day-to-day activities when we adopt this 3-step method.
Okay. Oh, that sounds great.
So let's talk about all these 3 steps and how they connect together. So usually when people, I would say there's the default mindset, okay? The default mindset is, this is how I grew up. This is how I learned to do things, right? So I saw my parents were stressed. This is how they reacted. Maybe they were shying away. Maybe they were procrastinating. Maybe they were more nervous and edgy. or any type of behavior. So the default mindset is how we grew up. And what we want to do is we want to challenge the old mindset, and then we want to replace it with a new one. And the new mindset says these are the 3 steps. The first step is recognize. As I mentioned before, awareness is the key to change. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we recognize that we feel stress. Later on, we will talk about how can we do it in a more structured way. How can we recognize that we are in stress? But recognition is the first important step. Just mention it to ourselves. This brings up the awareness, and this is the gateway to create a change. And the second thing is about acceptance. Buddhism and psychology, they have something in common. They both claim that when we are against something, when we don't accept something, we try to push it away, this is where the cycle of suffering begins. Just imagine, when if we get hit in our, we get hit in our body, then there's the initial pain. But when we think about it and we say, oh, it happened to me, this is suffering. So what we want to do, we don't want to suffer from the fact that we're in stress. We just want to make sure that we're in acceptance, saying, okay, I'm in stress. That's normal.
It's happened. I'm here. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly that. Now, I just want to make it clear because sometimes people might think, okay, acceptance means that I'm passive or it means that I'm giving up. It's definitely not that. We don't want to be passive or to give up or anything like that. We just want to be in a place when we don't try to push it away, because if we want to create a change, we just need to recognize and accept. And the third thing, maybe I would give a little background before I talk about utilization of the stress, because if you think about it, usually we are stressed about the things that matter to us. You talked about the professionals in the briefing world. These are people that feel stressed because they are really connected to what they're doing. It's important for them to be professionals, and it's important for them to thrive. If there's something that is not important to us, that is not connected to our core values, there's no reason for us to feel stressed about it. Imagine if I tell you something about some kind of someone in another country, and there's some kind of effect going there. Well, it's not connected to you, to your values, then you shouldn't feel stressed about it. But we feel stressed about things that are important to us. Understanding this helps us understand how can we create utilization. Because what we want to do after recognizing and after accepting the fact that we are in stress, we want to ask ourselves, why is this important to me? Why is the thing that I'm stressed about important to me? We want to go a step back, not just look at the task or the challenge ahead. We want to understand how this connects to the bigger picture that is part of our life. This task is important to me because I want to be an excellent professional in the briefing world, for example. And for me, the small details really matter because in my work, everything is about the details. This is why I'm stressed. So once we do that, we get a good, deeper connection. It's like when Simon Sinek talks about start with why. It's exactly that. We want to get connected back to what motivates us from the beginning. And once we understand that, we can say, you know what, I really want to thank my stress because it helped me become present to what's ahead. And I really want to focus my energy now to deal with the challenge in the best way possible. And this 3-step method, what it does, it actually helps us open our eyes and not to go on the autopilot of our default mindset. Because when people get stressed, their pattern is repeating. And sometimes when we are stressed, we have an inner critic, and which tells us, and the inner critic, what studies found, the inner critic really loves to come visit us when we are stressed. It's like there's a sign on the door that says, hey, welcome stress, we're waiting for you. Welcome inner critic.
This is so true. This is ringing so true right now.
Yeah. They nourish each other, because think about it. Then the inner critic comes and then he says, what is this? You're not good enough. It's not going to work. You're not going to make it. He's not a pleasant personality for us. He's not talking nicely to us. So the inner critic comes, and then he takes the original stress level that we're in. He starts talking, and then we're going to the red zone. We're going to the over stress zone. And what we want to do, we want to stop it in real time. When we're stopping it by doing this 3-step method, bringing awareness, stopping the autopilot default mindset mode, and trying to connect ourselves without forcing it and without pushing it away, and then harnessing the energy of stress. Because if you think about it, stress in the right level gives us more energy, more focus, more, we can have an edge when we feel stress in the right level.
This is what you were saying about the peak performance. You're getting right in that middle ground. That's actually, it's helpful. It's not detracting. You're not going all the way to the red line, but you're right in the zone, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if I ask you to think about 2 or 3 examples in your life, when you had a challenge, it wasn't an easy one, but it probably led to things that you are very proud of today.
Yes.
And if you think about it, stress was probably very present during these times. So harnessing the ability to help stress work with us and not against us is something that has to do with our modern life, because eventually what we want to do, we don't want to shy away from life. We don't want to start living a life that is not suitable to us, because some people love their careers, they love what they're doing, they're just paying a very high price for that. And what we want to do, we want to live a fulfilled life and not to pay this high price of endless stress. So this is just maybe one example and one method that can help us in real time to start making this small shift towards a less stressed life.
I love this. It just feels like taking that extra moment to recognize these pieces, the acceptance piece, just naming that alone as accepting that it's here, recognize and accept, and then utilizing this stress. But the question, why is it important to me? I think that's so key. And when you're saying, think back to a moment when you were able to harness that stress in a way where you pulled it all together and it really made you better or stronger or whatever that result you wanted. It helped you get to that end result. And I don't know why, but the first thing that popped into my head, back in college, I was choreographing a dance piece. And it was all of the professors, the teachers in the dance department, they were choreographing pieces. And there was only 2 of us that were students that were choreographing. And, the stress and the work that you put around that, and then, tech rehearsals and having it happen, it's one of the things I'm most proud of. It probably was one of those stressful things at that point in my life because I hadn't gone into, full working mode yet. But the joy that brought with all of the stress, deadlines, hard work, this, that, and the other, hurting all the folks that were in the piece, the outcome of it is such a memorable, meaningful thing to me.
Wow. So this is really, thank you for sharing this lovely story. It's amazing how, just by mentioning it, something just clicked in your mind to such a wonderful memory that you have. And when you shared it, I was just thinking about something that I never thought of before. When you think about birth, the event of giving birth, it's not just stress, it's a lot of things, but it is a stressful moment. But this really is helping. I was only in the room when it happened with my wife. I don't know how it feels, but this is a very stressful moment. But this stress is a very positive stress for us.
You know what? That's funny that you say that, because I got lucky. I had a couple of hours of labor. My sister had nearly 24 hours of labor, but I had 2 hours of labor. But they were saying, okay, if we don't get her out in the next few minutes. We're going to have to do a C-section. And it was like, okay, this is happening because I'm not doing a C-section, right? It was like, wow, okay, but you're right. I mean, everything. I mean, that is a life-changing experience. That is like everything in that moment. Yeah, it's stressful, but it's going to happen. So get your act together and, make it happen. It was right in between, but yeah, it definitely, that's so true. And I know when we talked before, you were talking about this, one of the ways to also reduce our stress, this stress profile that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Seems like, right time to talk about that. How can we use that?
Yeah. So first of all, let's get back to the first part of our mindset 3-step method.
Yes.
That I mentioned. So we talked about recognition, but I think
yes.
The most problematic thing, I think, with stress, that it's transparent. It's so normalized in our day-to-day
so true.
that it just makes sense that you are stressed. The time that you come back from vacation and you are still in this, relaxed, open, loose mode, and you go to work or maybe even to the grocery shop, and everybody are super busy, they're super stressed, and you feel their energy. It's so weird. But a couple of days later, you're already in this energy as well, right? Because
right back to
it's
it.
normal. It's normal. It's insane how normal it is that everybody is just stressed. It makes sense. This is how life is. And this creates a problem because if this is normal, if this is like water for us, if we are fish, it's normal, it's everywhere around me, then it's hard to spot when am I stressed. But as I mentioned before, awareness is key. And one of the tools that really helps us to understand when am I stressed is really to create our own stress profile, because stress, while being a very universal topic and mechanism, because it's a biological mechanism, it's not just for humans, animals have this mechanism as well. So, but understanding how, for me specifically and for you specifically, stress is affecting our life, this is really the key to start making a transformation. And let's talk about what is the stress profile. One, we need to have our own definition of stress. It could be our original definition of stress. It could be something, maybe even listening to this podcast and now creating our own definition of stress, but understanding what is stress for me, right? So this is the first step of creating the stress profile. And then the second thing is intuitively figuring out what are the common stressors in my life. So you can even narrow it down into what are the common stressors in my work, in my day-to-day workplace, and then figuring it out. It could be a weekly meeting, it could be specific events or times in the year. And I think just recognizing this, you can do it in different levels of zooming in. So it could be for everything in your life. It could be my family, my relationships, my financial situation, my health. And then you can narrow it down into very specific things. So that would be the second stage, understanding the common stressors in our life, because once we see them, they start to be very predictable. It's like getting angry while standing in traffic, right? But there's going to be traffic. And if you know that, why not, just listen to a good CX Live podcast on your way and chill, or just put in a great playlist, because that there's going to be traffic. So it's the same thing. If we know that there are common stressors that keep occurring in our life every time, we can expect them. So this is the second stage. And the third thing, this is really the most important thing. It's really understanding what are my stress signals. Understanding the stress signals is really the ability to create a real-time change. What are the stress signals? There are 3 levels. And for each one, they could be very different, because I might have very bodily physical reactions, and you might have more, very specific thought patterns that occur when you're in stress. And for another person, it could be more of like, how they react, how they behave. So there are 3 different levels. So I would say my thoughts or my thinking patterns when I'm stressed, it's really understanding how do I think? What are my thoughts and maybe the stories that I tell myself in my head?
Mhm.
And how do they
Yes.
sound like? So it could be something more like, oh, when I'm stressed, the inner critic comes and it's just, it starts hammering me. I already start to feel like, oh, you're not good enough. It's not going to work. You're not going to make it on time. So that
Right,
type of
right.
pattern.
Uh-huh.
Um, and maybe it could be a feeling of helplessness. Oh, I'm not sure. I don't know what to do, but there's some kind of pattern for each and every one of us that we can recognize. And sometimes maybe when people don't really know what is their pattern, the next time that they are stressed, they can just notice it for the first time. Let's just notice, oh, I know that I was stressed. What was I thinking to myself? So that could also, if intuitively you don't know how you think or behave or feel when you're stressed, then you can just notice the next time and then just write it down.
Okay.
And the second thing is actually physical or bodily reactions. So it could be sweaty hands, it could be increased breathing rate or heart rate. Some people, a lot of people actually, they feel it in their gut. Their stomach is twisting and turning and they feel restless. Some people have increased appetite and some people just don't have appetite at all. So everything, and again, for each and every person, it might be different, but I think this is the key here, just to understand how it is for me. And the third thing is how I behave. Some people might tend to procrastinate and just say, I don't even want to deal with it right now. Some people just block time and try to focus only on that. Some people actually do stress management when they feel it. So maybe they would do yoga or go for a walk in nature because, if I feel stressed, this is the first thing that I'm doing, just taking care of myself, which is amazing.
Right.
So this is the third part, understanding my stress signals. And if you combine that together, now that we're changing the order a little bit, if I know myself, I know how I think about stress, what are my common stressors, and usually how my stress signals appear in my life, in my body, in my thoughts, in my behavior, then it's easy for me to stop and say, hey, this is stress for me, right? This is how. So it's like just raising the flag for ourselves. And then this is really where the transformation comes. This is where we either start just a breathing technique, or we do the 3-step mindset change method, or combine them together, which is even better. But then we move from just being victims of stress to being more of like leaders of our life. Because you are a victim when you have nothing to do about anything. Something happened to me. I have no control about it. It is what it is. But when we start taking actions, starting taking care of ourselves and starting approaching life in a more constructive way, then we immediately move just by attempting to do it. We immediately move from being powerless to being powerful. And I think sometimes this is everything that we need just to make things better again. Does that make sense, Darby?
Oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. I'm looking at each of these 3 levels and just thinking for myself, like, where do I go? What you keep talking about is the inner critic, that voice.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's constant, but it's there a lot, and when, for myself, when I'm thinking, what are the stories I tell myself? What is the inner critic? For me, my brain goes to what if. I go down all the different paths of things. And I don't know if that's because it's an overlap from my work life as well, because when you're in a briefing program, in a center or just in a program, you are constantly planning for plan A, B, C, D. You always have backup plans for everything. And the what if, what if this happens, then I'm going to do this. So that's where I feel like I'm spinning. I always say I'm spinning in my head because I'm gone down so many different pathways of things that haven't even happened, but I'm trying to plan ahead for them. And so It's like I'm adding layers of stress to myself because of that. But when that critic comes in, I mean, there are times in my life where I've gone through stretches of having, like I sleepwalk, and I sleepwalk with the same dream that happens where I'm getting up and I physically get up and walk. I'm walking down the hallway to get to the front door. But my issue is I'm opening the door for people to arrive, but I haven't planned everything. Everything's not ready yet. And I will wake myself up kind of by the time I'm going to open the door, and my husband's like, you were at the front door again. I'm like, I'm glad I wake up when I get to that point. Wow. But I digress. It's just, but the pieces here, I'm associating so many things of my own experience, which is, it's part of the reason why the universe brought you here for right now.
Yeah. When I started teaching about stress and building peace, tranquility, and coherence, initially it just sounds like, stress, what does it have to do with me? But yeah, this is also my perspective to life. I talk a lot about growth mindset, and in growth mindset, seeing the challenges and opportunity to grow and learn is really everything about life in this perspective, because if challenges just push us back, then it's one thing. But if we see everything as a way to explore ourselves, understanding how can we grow from that, then just like you're demonstrating right now, you start connecting the dots, and it's way more than just stress. It's life.
Yes.
But stress is just one factor that really pushes everything. It creates stress with everything. So we feel less spacious and everything that comes with it, because eventually life maybe not supposed to be super easy all the time, but it doesn't need to feel this way. What we want to do is we really want to change our experience in life. And from my perspective, emotions are like the soundtrack of everything that we do in life. Just imagine watching the same movie, just with music and the sound effects, and with nothing at all, or maybe with different sound effects that would create a whole different experience. And this is emotions.
Yeah.
So it's hard to connect, to disconnect stress from everything else. It's all connected. And I want to get back to talk to you maybe just for 1 minute about the inner critic, because I talk about it a lot in my program.
Yes.
I would just say one thing, the inner critic has the nerve, I would say, to talk to us in a way that we would not let anyone, even not our biggest haters, talk to us this way.
Yes, right. But we'll do it to ourselves.
We'll do it to ourselves. And he's very aggressive, and I'm trying to find the right word, but I think everybody at this point understands what is their inner critic and how negative it could be. But the thing is, with the inner critic, we are also the only ones that actually takes this image or, figure in our head so seriously.
Right.
Nobody else that cares about you and knows you, Darby, if you would tell them, what my inner critic told me today, they would burst in laugh. They would start laughing and tell you, Darby, I can't imagine you even said something like this to yourself. It's so not like you. Mm-hmm. So the inner critic is like a secret that we have. And once we unleash this secret and we put the light on our inner critic, then it doesn't have this power anymore. The inner critic also is pulling the energy because we feel ashamed of how we even talk to ourselves. Yeah. But there's a thing about the inner critic. If you have the ability, Darby, to actually recognize, hey, I know this voice is my inner critic. Yeah. And then, you can find this funny, even, I would say goofy name for this personality that you have. And you don't try to fight with him and say, oh, I can't believe that I'm saying this to myself, but you just smile to him and say, hey, Mr. Critique, you're here again. Oh, let's, you're so mean. I know this is what you want to do. You just need a little bit of attention. I see you. And thanks for coming and visiting me. But I really don't need your advice anymore, Mr. Critique. And even just create an imaginary, I would say, very goofy image in your head about how this person looks, so you don't take it so seriously. Because once you put this personality that everybody has, I've talked to so many people specifically about that, and I was so surprised. I actually talked to a woman that she was one of the first female pilot in Israel, I would say, jet pilot of the Air Force. So she, I look at this type of person as, oh my God, she's like a semi-god, because usually one of the top people. And when we talked about the inner critic and how sometimes I was like, everybody has this, this person. Yeah. She's like, the elite person, and she has it. Everybody has it. Yeah. So once we understand everybody has this inner critic, we recognize it. We give it a name. Even we're trying to make him sound funny in our head. Or, oh, you're not good enough. We want to echo. We just want to laugh about it. It just dissolves. Yeah. It dissolves because you cannot take this thing seriously anymore. It's not me. This is the inner critic. He comes sometimes. There's nothing to do about it. Let's give him, shake his hand, say hello, just have some laughs, and just tell him, thank you. Maybe next time. Bye-bye. And this helps. This helps.
Yeah. We're just talking and things are just popping up. I honestly, and people that have listened to this podcast know this, things just got to pop up. As you're talking, this idea of giving the inner critic a personality and voice, it's resonating with me in a different way. Also, I'm also listening to an audiobook right now that's called Don't Believe Everything You Think. And I know it's so perfect. The idea in there, the one key takeaway so far in that is that we have thoughts, and the problem is we think about those thoughts. And so what you're saying here kind of ties in with how to recognize that it's a thought, and it can just stay kind of that way and not let it expand into this whole conversation with the inner critic. Just stop it right there. Laugh at it. Give it a name, an image, a funny voice, or whatever it is, to stop that thinking, or the spinning, as I call it. And I'm going to take what you just said and add it to that and put them together. I'm like, all right, this is really good. Because I'm catching myself sometimes now, and now I can catch myself and give it, a name or personality as well, and kind of like separate from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Separate from
it's exactly that. The only thing that I would like to add, just to encourage you and the listeners, just stick with it. We are so habituated into one type of thinking, or maybe to everything that our brain is used to, and even our neurological patterns that affect our emotion and the nervous system. They are all tied together. Yeah. Our brain, our nervous system, our emotions. And these patterns, if you think about it, it's like, I would say, if you look at a field, some kind of a field, and then there's a tractor or some kind of a truck going over the field, it creates a path in the field. But if you go in with this truck on the field again and again and again, this path becomes super solid, and everybody thinks, it's always here.
That's the road, and right? Yeah.
It's exactly. Now it becomes from a path to a clear road. Mm-hmm. And when we are changing our mindset, our thinking patterns, the way that we live, actually, it just takes time and practice for us to create this new path. Now we're taking the truck. We want to drive in a new path. And the driver might be confused sometimes because he's looking at the old path and he's trying to drive the old path because this is very normal for the driver. It's a clear road. So the beginning might be a little bit challenging. We just want to make sure that we're taking the new path enough times for this to become the new path. So everything that I'm just saying in a very metaphorical way is just stick with it until this becomes your new autopilot.
I love that. That is great. And I thank you. And I want to take us back to just to kind of wrap up on the stress profile and the steps that you took us through with that you have provided a special document for our listeners as well that talks about these pieces. And that is something that we're going to have on our webpage for this particular episode for folks to be able to download and be able to do this for themselves. So I just want to thank you very much for creating that for us.
Yeah, that's my pleasure.
Absolutely. Oh, this is great. I'm I'm buzzing with all these different like connection pieces. And I keep going back to what you had said earlier about default mindset and how we learn these things from our parents, and we learn it from, when we're growing up and things, and how we slip back into kind of default ways of thinking. And, I'm just thinking about, my mom and dad were such different people and like learning different things from each of them. But, like with my dad, you had to do all your chores. You had to do everything before you could sit down and relax. There's certain things that you just, that are patterns that you continue to live with, and trying to change that over the course of time. But these tools that you've given are so helpful. And I know that we're wrapping up here, but you had also shared with me some of the things that if we take the time to do these steps, we identify, we recognize, we're going through these steps for ourselves. Like what does it mean for me specifically? Because like you said, everyone's stress shows up in a different way. What are some of the positive outcomes that you can identify? Like, leave us with some words of hope here.
Yeah, first of all, I think hope is the basis of everything that we're doing. I'm not fascinated about stress as I am about living a fulfilled life.
Yeah.
Tackling stress was not my core mission, but understanding that stress gets in the way in so many things that we do. We talked about the professional world. Think about a stressed manager, a stressed leader, a stressed employee, a stressed family, a stressed relationship. So stress can get in the way in so many of the things that are important to us. But let's talk about the bright side. What happens when we reduce some of the stress? Then, first of all, eventually think about all the things that we do just to get some time of peace and tranquility.
Yeah.
And, this is eventually one aspect of life beyond just getting into peak performance. It's a state that I think it's a very natural state, just like stress is right now in the modern life. I think spending time with more peace and more tranquility, or tranquility, maybe this is how it's pronounced, is a great benefit. Now, having more clarity, making a better communication with each other when we're not stressed. This is something that is so important. Having the, in heart math, they call it a state of ease eventually.
Oh, yeah.
And I think these are the gifts that money cannot buy. When we talk about the bright side of managing stress, this is where we can have a threshold that we cross, because reducing stress is not the goal. It's the journey to having a more fulfilled life and having a more positive emotional experience. We already talked about the fact that emotions is the soundtrack of our life. So what happens to our lives if we have more feelings of love, contentment, peace, tranquility? What happens when our ability to be more creative, to sleep better, to suffer from less headaches and stomach aches, all of these things are actually an improvement to the quality of our life, improvement to our relationships, to our professional life, and overall to our state of mind. So I think it's not very flashy. I'm not saying something that is so shiny but I actually think this is part of life, just embracing these positive aspects of our life is much easier when we feel less stressed. So I think this is the upside of everything that we just talked about so far.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Maybe I do have one flashy way to say it.
Okay.
Think about your life if you don't need to run away from it while taking vacations. This is how usually we live our lives. We're working just to get to the weekend. We're collecting weekends just to go to the next vacation. And what happens if we don't need to run away from it? I'm not against weekends or vacations. I'm just saying, imagine life if you don't need it so much.
Yeah.
So this is the part that gets me excited about talking about it and implementing it in my life.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting way to look at it, because I think so many of us now are conditioned that is how it is. We're work, and we are looking towards the weekend, or we're looking for vacation, but it's such a different feeling, different way of being when we're in vacation mode versus work, and how great it would be to kind of bring those two closer together on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. It's interesting because, as I mentioned, years and years ago, about being, aware of and hearing about stress and media and whatnot. I think one of the things I'm taking away is just knowing ourselves better. Like, I know myself, no matter what job I'm in, I'm going to be harder on myself than anybody else. I'm going to, nose down, go, because I want to do the best work. I want to make a difference, all that, but at what cost? And, being able to have some of these tools now in the recognition of that, what we talked about with the inner critic, recognizing the physicalities of it. I loved the analogy too about, traffic. You're standing in traffic. You can predict. If you predict and where there's certain times in your day or your week or your year, you're coming up to, the big conference that we have, and all the things that go around getting ready for that. Okay, we'll put some things in place that can help with that, like schedule those things in to help or make new practices around those particular periods of time to help ourselves in advance. We're all such planners in the briefing world. So, putting those things in and scheduling them in advance, I think would be super helpful, but things that we can identify with as briefing managers too, right?
Yeah, I would just say maybe two more things just to maybe add to that. One is having compassion to ourselves while doing that, understanding that we're doing it to be better for ourselves, with ourselves. So the first thing is compassion. And the second thing that I really like is putting ourselves in a mindset of a researcher, someone who's conducting an experiment. Because when we are in this, when a researcher conducts an experiment, maybe they have their hypothesis, but they don't cling to it and say, this result must come out. They're curious. They're saying, let's see what the result is, because this is why we're doing this experiment. So if we have compassion and we look at how we tackle these challenges in a new way, this really helps us not to cling too hard to, I'm expecting this result to work for me or not to work for me. I'm just curious. And when we're curious, we cannot be disappointed too much. We're just curious about it. So these are two things that really help me when I'm trying to make a change. I'm just curious. Let's see if it works. Let's see how it worked this time, that time. And it makes the process of creating a change better for me.
I love that. There's some freedom in that. There's a lot of freedom in that, not getting attached to what an expected outcome has to be by trying something out, being okay if, your hypothesis isn't correct and, you try, okay. And, now I'm going to shift and try something else. And that's okay. Like the freedom to have, or giving permission even for that to be how we look at taking care of ourselves. Yeah. Oh, Shlomi, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for all of this. I always love to wrap up with lessons learned. If you wouldn't mind, if you have some lessons learned that we can leave everyone with.
Yeah, actually, I think my lesson learns actually connect directly to everything that we mentioned. So I would say the first thing is gratitude. Gratitude, especially a daily practice of gratitude. is one of the most transformative superpowers that we can have. It takes a minute and a half to kickstart the day with 3 things that we are grateful for. This practice not only helped me live a more balanced, happier life, but so many people that I gave them this challenge came back to me 2 weeks, 3 weeks later and told me, wow, it changed my entire day. Because something happens when we are grateful to what we have in our life, our minds start getting used to that. And the brain works just like an application. Once you install this application, you tell the brain, this is the new application. Now your job is to seek and find all the things that I could be grateful today so I can write about it tomorrow. This is how the brain interprets that.
Well, kind of like AI, we're training our brain in the same way, right? It's our language model that we're setting up.
Yeah. And what happens then, we switch on a radar that actually is looking for the good things in our lives during the day. So, and this fills us up with, gratitude is some kind of a quality of the heart. We didn't talk a lot about heart math today, but you did talk about it in the previous episode. So the listeners can actually tie this now together.
Right.
Gratitude is one of the most transformative powers that we have and one of the best qualities of the heart. And without going into a lot of details, I would just say that gratitude creates an electromagnetic field coming from our heart. This is something that is scientific. This is not something spiritual, even though I like spirituality, but this is scientifically proven that our magnetic field is really increasing when we have a true feeling of gratitude in our life. So this is my first thing out of the top 3. The second thing is growth mindset. We already talked about growth mindset earlier, and we talked about it as looking at challenges and as an experience, coming with curiosity to things, understanding that some things takes time, changing our mindset, being habituated from childhood to adulthood with some type of pattern. It just takes time. So in a nutshell, just tell yourself, not yet. If I'm not able to stop the inner critic, it's not, I would never be able. Just say, I'm not there yet. I'll be able to do it in the future. So and not yet is a it's a very important topic. And it comes directly from Carol Dweck that wrote the book about mindset, the new psychology of success, which is highly recommended. Okay. And the third thing I would say is heart-focused breathing. I don't know if in the last episode you mentioned that, but it really ties everything together. It's our ability to connect ourselves, to our hearts in a matter of 60 seconds or less. And it just means taking slow, deep breath into the area of the heart, imagining our breath coming in and out of the heart. We can put our hands on our hearts, or we can just imagine it in our brains. Doing that for 60 seconds, you can even, if you really want to count it, so it could be just 5 seconds breathing in, 5 seconds breathing out, and just doing 6 cycles of that in a minute. Everyone that would practice this, you can do it with eyes closed or open, will feel an immediate shift that coming out directly from our breath to our nervous system. And then from the nervous system just gives the brain and the body a signal, just chill and relax. This is, I would say, the antidote to a stressful event that usually just triggers the stress response. This is the antidote. So there's a lot of breathing technique that can actually help with it, but I just wanted to give the heart-focused breathing one.
Thank you. Absolutely. It reminds me of, our breathing at the beginning of yoga class also. And it is amazing the difference that it makes, from everything that you're dealing with in your day, as we've talked about, to just even those first couple of minutes just spent doing the breathing. It does. It completely shifts everything. And I think it's why I think yoga is my new addiction, honestly, because it allows you to go into that space. Now, I need to remember that I can do that anytime. Sitting here in my chair or wherever I am, anytime. So with that, Shlomi, I want to say thank you so much. I'm so grateful for our conversation today. I'm so thrilled that we were able to connect in the way that we have. Thank goodness for, Sharon, and being able to have this be the second piece in this little mini series, which I've never done before. But really, your experience, all these years of research, and just the science and the psychology and the pieces that you've brought all together here, and the analogies and everything, I just am really grateful. Speaking of gratitude, I'm really grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It was a heartfelt conversation, and I'm really thrilled that we had this. I'm excited about it. Thank you for hosting me.
Absolutely. And I hope we can stay in touch as well too. I'm gonna hop on and I'll also be putting up links to, I know your podcasts are in Hebrew, but there's one that's not. And I'm going to link that one on our page as well for people to be able to hear you and be able to listen to you and in your conversation. So thank you again. And I will say thank you to everyone listening today. And please visit our podcast episode page, where we'll provide links to those resources that Shlomi was referencing in our discussion today. And you can listen to this and other episodes in our series by visiting the cxlive.buzzsprout.com or through the ABPM Resources podcast page. And please subscribe to stay informed about future podcast episodes. And if you have any questions or thoughts about today's podcast, or any ideas for future briefing industry podcast topics, the best way to reach me is at Darby@engagewithexpressions.com. And thank you for listening.